You're listening to World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world. And here are your hosts, Aingeal Rose and Ahonu.
You are very welcome. My name is Ahonu, and in place of Aingeal Rose today, we have the famous Douglas Vernon. Now I say famous because I say famous purposely because to me you're famous really, and also this man is famous in the area of Bend, Oregon, where we are located right now. He runs various meetup groups and he runs meditation circles and that kind of thing, and we will get him to talk about those very things during the course of our little interview today. But to start off though, I was fascinated to find out that in the preparation for this interview today, I'm going around here pretending to be really professional, and it turns out he spent years in the television business.
That's correct.
So what a great place to start. Tell us about that, because it does lead into what you're doing today.
Yeah, I worked in television in Portland at KGW TV, which is the NBC affiliate,
Right.
and I was there for 17 years, in the business for 25 years.
Wow.
And I primarily did documentaries. I also did commercials and that sort of thing on the side, not on the side, but
Well, were you on the camera end, or were you in the studio?
I was camera in the
Right.
field, and I was also the editor of them. And
cool.
we were extremely successful at what
Yeah.
we did, and they
Yeah.
just loved us there. It's not something that's usually a profit area for a station, but it is an image thing, and we also got a lot of press out of it. So
Yeah.
the press paid for a lot of it as
Right.
well. So
Now, in the kind of thing that we do, we find a lot of documentaries about consciousness and about earth changes and, all that kind of thing. And Gaiam TV is one that comes to mind. But you see, they're all over the place. The Thrive was a documentary as well. Did you ever do anything like that, or were they all like practical 3D kind of documentaries?
Well, I would say more practical 3D. They were all social issues and that sort of thing, so that we could bring the consciousness of the people up
Right.
in the community and that
Yeah.
sort of thing, about what was going on in the community. I mean, we did Children of Cocaine, which was a really sad, heartbreaking thing. We did Asylum in the Streets, which was when people were coming out of the institutions and they were closing them down, and they just drop them off in the streets and that sort of thing. And we recorded a lot of that so that we could show what was happening and what needed to happen. And in fact, the state used that for a long time for their own training of people and that sort of thing. And probably one of the thing I loved about it was that we were working with people who had a lot of love and that sort of thing, which was nice.
Right, yeah.
For what they were doing and that sort of thing. And there was one family in particular that we worked with that adopted all these children who had really tragic childhoods.
Wow.
And they just showed such love to these kids that made just a world of difference in their lives. And you could tell that.
And you were able to capture that on camera. I mean,
We actually lived with them for several days or
Yeah.
weeks. Actually, we went out several different times. Actually lived with them. In the middle of the night, we'd get woken up with something going on with one of the kids or something like that. And so we were able to show all of that and show the kind of love that is out there for people who are really challenged in a lot of ways. And especially for kids, it gives them some hope for their future.
Now, that would make sense to people who know you coming from that background, because you're a very heart-centered guy. And it's one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you, was to get to find out, so that our listeners and our viewers could understand the Douglas Vernon that we know. Because I find it quite amazing, actually, that because of my upbringing and because of a lot of men's upbringing, it tends to be very macho. The man has to follow this macho kind of a role, do you know? Now, I don't mean feminine, don't get me wrong, but you're very heart-centered. Do you think that originated from that experience in the television in Portland, like from that?
I do, and also I was married at the time to a woman who was really aware of feminine issues and that sort of thing.
Right.
And I actually marched with NOW and donated money and stuff to them and that sort of thing, because I was if she hadn't been patient enough to teach me in a lot of ways, so I could understand that, they have a right to their lives as well. We don't have to be the ones in charge of their lives. They need to be in charge of theirs. Sure. And the more I've discovered about what goes on in life in general, is that the clearer we are in ourselves, the more available we are to other people and to be in loving space.
Wow. Now, how did that all change? Like, what happened to the whole television work, documentary business that you were in, that changed, that brought you to Bend and into what you do now?
Well, what the major change in my life, and probably one of the most beautiful things was when I got to the end of my television career. I knew it was over. I had arthritis in my wrist and was not able to carry the camera much anymore. Okay. And I was just burned out doing it. And so I sought something else. And I said, I want something that I can love as much as I do doing documentaries and that sort of thing. And at about the same time, I was getting a divorce. And I was in a men's group. And in the men's group, there was just some wonderful people. And I was telling him, I said, well, I think maybe I'd probably benefit from some therapy or something like that. So I asked, and this guy says, well, I've got a friend who's got her boyfriend is learning this process, and he's looking for clients to work with. And so
that was convenient.
It was wonderful. And I can't tell you how wonderful it was. I mean, I can tell you how wonderful it was. He was a Hakomi student, which Hakomi is a body-centered psychotherapy. And he was just so incredible. He had been a bartender. That was his background.
Wow.
And he was learning this process, which just blew me away. I mean, every time I went there, things changed in my life. Gosh. Because I had so much stuff going on that I hadn't realized.
Well, don't they say that the bartender is probably the best psychotherapist? The one who's listening to
Well, I never thought of it that way, but you're probably right.
He's probably well suited for it.
Well, he was also an alcoholic before that.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Yeah, he was a pretty fascinating guy. And I thought, well, if he can do that, maybe I can. Sure. And that was after I'd gone through 15 or more sessions, and he said I was basically done. But one of the stories that I love to tell is one of the things that happened to me on my third session. I go in and I really don't have anything. I'm not thinking about what I need to work on or anything. He says, that's fine. He says, so just allow yourself, and what you do is just get mindful and go inside and sit with yourself. And I did that, and the word lonely came up.
And that didn't fit for you, I imagine, at the time.
No, it did, actually.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I mean, probably in that moment, I didn't tie it with anything. But boy, when it became clear, it was obvious. So I sat with that. And then the next thing, I'm sitting with that, and he says, okay, just sit with the word lonely and notice what happens in your body and that sort of thing. And so as I'm there, the next thing, I come to find myself in a camp, or basically it's a campground where we used to go play with some friends of ours and that sort of thing, not too far from town. And what happened is that I'm on one side of the creek and they're on the other side of the creek. All the kids are playing baseball, and I said, I want to be with them. And so he says, well, just allow yourself to be in that little kid and notice what goes on. The next thing I notice, I'm in a crib. And I'm bawling my brains out.
Now, just to cut across for a moment so I understand, you weren't in a past life regression type of thing.
No.
That's not what it was. Was it hypnosis?
No, it wasn't hypnosis. It's just being very mindful of what's going on in you. And the guy acts as a guide, just kind of notices what's going on with me and kind of keeps me focused on it so that I'm not
guiding you along.
Cut away, how we try and get away from anything that's painful or anything.
Yeah.
So he's guiding me there, and just basically you just be still and notice what's going on. And here I am in the crib. And I'm bawling, and I understand from some of the stories that I was very colicky as a baby. And what I realize is that back when I was in that crib, I made a decision that I couldn't be with other people. I had to take care of myself. Right. Nobody else would be there because I was crying and nobody would come.
Right. So this is the
I mean, they probably did a lot, but
sure.
So much of it.
Yes, the general overall imprint that was left was one of being lonely.
Exactly. And so as soon as I realized that, it changed.
Geez, yes.
I didn't feel lonely. I felt connected with people again. It was just so marvelous.
Well, you know something? As you're talking this out now, I have to say many of our listeners and viewers would know, because we've mentioned it many times, that my past, I lost, my first son died when he was 4 months old, and he died on my birthday. Now, in the same way, trying to come to terms with that, trying to figure out why did he die and why me, and, you know, because I was a kind of a person who, in a sense, understood karma, and so I was using that to say to myself, you know, I'm not a murderer, I'm not an alcoholic or a rapist, or so. Right. So why did it happen to me? I didn't do anything wrong, you know what I mean? And yet, years and years of this sorrow was on top of me, you see. But in the analysis of it, just like you, now I didn't go down a mainline psychotherapy route or anything. It was just a kind of a realizations that were coming over time. Was the word abandonment. And it's the same as what you're talking about there. Yeah. You know, the loneliness.
Exactly.
Now, but the loneliness, I think, is slightly different. So for me, the abandonment, though, was very interesting because I felt that my son Ryan had abandoned me. You know? And in that same way, all the other incidences in my life were coming to me to where I could put that label on it. I could say, God, that was abandonment. Yeah. That was abandonment. That was abandonment, you know? So I began to recognize that I had an abandonment issue.
Yeah.
You see? But
like I had a loneliness issue.
Like you, when it comes to the surface, you know, when it comes up to that level of recognition, of awareness, then it dissolves because it's like, you got it.
Right.
You got it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that's one of the things that I've learned is that we carry all of this stuff in our body.
Yeah.
We have stuckness of energy all over. Yeah. And it's for very good reason that we didn't know how to deal with it then. So it had to be kind of put in the back burner, if you will.
Sure.
Because
somewhere.
I don't know what to do with it. Otherwise I'll die, you know. So I'm just going to tuck it away.
Not knowing that it would come up later at some point, or it would have some kind of an influence. Not. Yeah, but it would.
I was fortunate enough that I was led that direction to a certain degree.
Yeah, I found that the issue for me of abandonment was always there somewhere in the background, or was somewhere lingering, even though it wasn't in my face. You know, as time went on, I was able to say, "Oh, that's why." Now it makes sense. Right. So I think it doesn't ever go away, even though we put it into our bodies. Metaphorically speaking, even though we put it away, it doesn't ever go away.
Right. No, it does not.
What I'm saying, yeah.
And that's what led to the process that I'm doing now, but we'll get into that more later.
We'll get into that in a minute, because one of the questions that I wanted to ask Douglas Vernon, which I found really amazing, was when you mentioned earlier, when you first came in and we were talking about television and studios and all that kind of thing, you mentioned that you were an inventor.
Yes.
Now, I love the thought of that. I mean, I don't even know where one would begin. So tell us about it.
I just love creating things, and I see some areas where there might be something that's needed. Like when I was in television, they were looking for a program. Well, I thought, why don't I create a program? So I started. It came to me, and basically what I did was I'd lay in my bed at night sometimes, and I just allow the creative juices to flow, and this thought came to me on the spot.
Right.
So I got up and I wrote down some things, and then I started expanding on it over time. And I started asking people, what do you think of this and that? And I got feedback, and I got more feedback, feedback. So it kept expanding. Yeah. And that's one of the things, too, that I'm realizing now that's happening in my life is the expansion is just incredible. Right. Because I don't have all these stuck energies in me now. I'm more creative now than I ever was. In fact, I call myself a spiritual inventor now.
Oh, that's very cool. I like that. That is so cool. Now we're all familiar with the kind of inventors, like new technologies coming out all the time.
Right.
Do you think that that's a fundamental part of the human to be creative like that, and that everybody should be like that? But at the moment, we're only getting little pockets of certain people in certain countries who are creative like that.
It's funny you should ask that. One of the things that in the process of evolutionary self-healing that came to me was that we have technology now that's just exploding.
Sure.
And part of that is that because the expansion of the universe is happening, it's also happening within us. But we have a mind, and we can shunt off some of this stuff that's stuck in us or whatever.
Yeah.
But the technology, it's just there. And there are people who are clear, and they see these things and ideas, and they come up with them. And that's why computers and technology are just going nuts right now, is because the energy is here for that.
And it happens much faster too, doesn't it, than ever before?
It is, because we have a mind that holds us back.
Explain that.
Well, what happens is with technology is that people continue to work on things and just fine-tune them. And well, you can tell by technology with what's happened with computers in the last 20 years, how much they've expanded.
God,
that's what happens, because we got different ideas, and we aren't held up by the stuff that's stuck in us. Right. We can go ahead and do that, but our own minds hold us back in our own growth. Okay. Our own mind and our mind body. Because this stuff stores all that stuff, it's the same thing. Got some similar cellular things like in our brain and that sort of thing.
Well, you mentioned about coming up with a solution for a program, but give us some other little short stories of some of the things you've invented.
Well, one of the things was when I did the Hakomi training, I realized that it doesn't take a 4 or 6 year degree to be someone who can help somebody else.
Okay.
And basically most of the training is getting out of your own way. Okay. So you learn about all these things that are going on in you. While we're going through our training, that's what we are working on is ourselves. Okay. And so we're releasing all of this information and everything. Yeah. And I want to tell you one story in particular that in the Hakomi training, I was working with a student, and I went back to a time when I was 5 or 6, and I gave up being a healer.
When you were 5 or 6?
Yeah. I realized that I had done that. And my body started shaking for 2 hours. People sat with me through lunch.
Was this a memory that you were?
Yeah, absolutely. I made a decision that I was not going to be a healer because whatever was happening in my life at that time. Yeah. And so my body released that negative energy that has been stuck there. And at 2 hours, I was sitting there with other students, sat with me through lunch, as my body vibrated and just released that energy. And then I was able to become the healer that I was meant to be.
Interesting. Yeah.
So anyway, you were asking about
an invention.
Inventions. So one of the things with the Hakomi process, I thought, well, why not get this into the prisons and that sort of thing and help people who are having some real challenges? We could train very easily some of the people in there that are going to be there for a while and have some talent that might be able to focus in that way. So we train them, and they work with other prisoners, and the prisoners get to understand more about who they are and expand their possibilities. And then some of the ones that are coming out, have a way to go. And
I'm just curious, when you were doing the prison thing, was that like a one-to-one where you physically would do this training with a prisoner, or did you fall back on your television experience and do it by way of video? Or
no, just I think it has to be individual, right? Primarily because the little self needs to understand more about themselves before they can go anywhere. Yes. If we're stuck in all those old memories and stuff, we're not going to ever become our big self.
Isn't it interesting, though, that you mentioned about technology and how it's moving exponentially, but at the same time, there's always that need. It always falls back to that need for the human contact, and that's a perfect example of it.
Absolutely.
where you do need, and people do need that one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important. Is you have one person that believes in you, and then you start learning to believe in yourself, and then you can go out and believe in yourself in the world.
Yeah. I think all the online training in the world is great, and all the video training and all that is all great, but there comes a time when you must fall back to that one-on-one, and that's
and I think a lot of meditation and that sort of thing helps people in that way too. It gets them clearer about who they are, because they're allowed to be still and not be stuck in the brain with all kinds of monkey mind, if you will.
Sure.
You've heard that term, I'm sure. It's a big one.
Let us take this opportunity to remind you that we're speaking with Douglas Vernon, who's from Bend, Oregon, and at the end of the program we are going to ask him for his contact details, because people do need that contact and they would like to hear more about the process that you use and so on. We will be talking more about that when we come back, but first we must take a quick little studio break. Stay with us, we'll be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Aingeal Rose Grady, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about the work that I've done for the past 20 years being a reader of the Akashic Records, predominantly. I've evolved to this work through many years of meditation and being taken to other worlds, and found that we all have a library in spirit that contains our soul's journey through all of our lifetimes on this planet and others. Through my work, I enjoy helping other people find their soul purpose, look at their spirit, help them through their challenges, understand their relationships, and guide them to fulfill their highest soul purpose. I've written 2 books on this subject. One's called A Time of Change, and those were predominantly group sessions that we did when people had bigger spiritual questions for the problems in their lives, such as what about the financial collapse? What about 2012? What about healing? What happens when people commit suicide? Things like this that became the basis for group sessions that began in 2009 and continue to this day. The first book, A Time of Change, deals with questions that happened before 2012 and some leading into what would happen after. And the second book, The Nature of Reality, deals with questions people asked about consciousness, what is God, what's the origin of creation, what about time and dimensions, what about dreams, why do we dream, and love and miracles and topics such as that. I'm also a personal Akashic Record consultant, and I'm also a business consultant through the Akashic Records. I feel these ways of going into the records and helping people in their personal lives and in their business adds an extra sacred dimension to their life here. If you're interested in seeing more about my work, you can go to aingealrose.com or worldofempowerment.com. Thank you.
You're very welcome back. Ahonu here with my guest today, who is Douglas Vernon from Bend. And we've been speaking about his background, which was in the television documentary side of business. And he moved from that into the healing and the self-help business, really. And I'm delighted that he's here, because I've been trying to track him down for quite some time to talk about his work particularly, but also how the work that he's doing is part of a magnificent bigger picture, really. What you're doing, absolutely. You're very representative, I think, of what's happening on a global universal scale. And you know, even though you might feel that when you're working one-on-one with somebody that it's a small, very small scale thing, but in fact you're tapped into something that's very huge. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's something that came to me. I was fortunate enough to work with a gentleman who wrote a book series on evolution.
Okay.
And what he wrote opened the possibilities that I had never thought even possible.
Right.
And it gave me a perspective that was more likely what happened in our evolution than what we've been taught through our religious dogma and that sort of thing.
Are you referring to Zecharia Sitchin's work and all of that, extraterrestrial origins of mankind? Or no?
No.
Oh, you're going to have to tell us.
No, Daryl Oakes is the author of the book series, and he talks about the process and the pattern of evolution and gets into all kinds of different things. But the key thing was that we are now realizing how connected we are.
Okay. Gotcha.
And one of the things is when I was doing research, I discovered that in 1906, there were, back in the 1900s, or early 1900s, there was close to 2,000 maybe churches.
You mean different denominations?
Different denominations.
Okay, yeah.
And do you know how many there are today?
Ooh, I don't know. Are there more or less now? That's a good one.
A lot more.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Over 34,000.
Wow.
Now,
so explain that.
Well, one of the things I
did not realize that.
I looked it up and I was just blown away by it.
Wow.
But the thing that made more sense to me is, do you know what the root word is for denomination? Divisive.
Oh, really?
So here we are with all this division going on, and we're
more so
multiplying.
now.
Yeah, exactly.
God,
so
I never realized that.
This whole aspect of what he brought to it is that when we start realizing how connected we are, we can have all the religions we want, but the thing that we need to understand is that it's all about self, and it's about how we connect with one another, with our environment, with everything. It's not about being individual and pulled away and I got to get this is greedy and this, we don't have to go through any of that.
Yes.
We can learn to love and connect with one another. And
now here,
look at your breathing.
I've got a big, because I've got a big question for you here. And, please understand this. We, like you, are aware of consciousness and the growth of awareness and all of that, and how that is exponential too. Right. But here's my question around it. If on the one hand you have all this new division, as you called it, all these denominations, and at the same time you have this growth of awareness, like, are they still competing at the same level? Like, is it, do you understand my question? If all this division is happening, is that overcoming any growth of awareness, or is the growth of awareness overcoming all these divisions?
I think the growth of awareness is overcoming all the divisions, because I think what's happening, and you see it in all the churches almost all of them are losing people.
Right.
The people are leaving or trying another. I mean, I've tried 3 or 4 different religions.
Yes.
And I always found that there was something missing.
I'm laughing because I could tell you a story about my brother when we were much younger. I think I was like 18 years old and he was 20. And he was working in Scotland, and I had just left school in Ireland, and I'd found work in the oil fields in the North Sea. So I found myself flying into Edinburgh, and I'd stay with him one night before leaving for the oil rigs the next morning, you see. So each time I'd go to him, he was in a different religion. He was experimenting with different. So one time I'd say to him, "Let's go for a few drinks." "Oh no, I can't drink.
I don't
against
drink
my religion."
Right.
The next time I'd go, he'd say, "Oh, I'm only allowed to have wine. I'm not allowed to touch it." Next time we'd go on the tear and we'd have a lot of drinks, So it's
so you see how many different things can happen with all these 34,000 plus religions.
Yes,
all different ways of looking at life.
And each one powerful enough to influence people to commit them to things that don't make sense.
Yeah.
Like one minute my brother was drinking, and he had no problem with it. The next moment he wasn't, because he did have a big problem with it.
Right.
And it was only just the thought. that made those differences.
Exactly.
He belonged to this religion, and that was the end of it.
Right.
It was strange, the power of it.
I can recognize that. I did that too.
Yeah.
Very much so. And now I realize how important it is to be spiritual in myself and be connected with each and everybody, regardless of what their religion is or any of that. They're perfectly okay right where they are.
Yes.
And I can love them that way.
Yeah.
And whether they love me or not, that's up to them. But I have the capacity, the greater capacity in myself now that I can connect with people in a much more loving way.
Right.
Without being judgmental or vindictive or anything.
Now, those
like that.
the way you described that, is that something that any of those religions teach?
Not from my experience.
Yeah, nor mine either.
Yeah.
So I wonder what is the draw then for them? Like, in order to found a church of one kind or another, there must be some draw. You know, if there's 34,000 churches, there must be some attraction.
Comfort. They get comfort from it. And part of that is that they've got all this pain stored in their bodies.
Right.
And so why not
Yes.
go to this religion where I can feel better? That's what they're looking for, is some way to feel better. But when you start feeling better about yourself inside, you don't need a religion. It's okay if you're in one. It doesn't matter because you can connect in any way you want.
Yes.
But having that deeper compassion, that deeper richness, that deeper expansion in your life, you don't need a religion for that. We can all be shepherds. We don't have to be sheep.
Now, Doug, is there any problem with that on the level of it? In other words, what I'm asking you is, if somebody needs that comfort and they find it in a religion, like, isn't that okay in that moment?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what I did. I found it in all the different ones that I did. I did a wide. I was raised Catholic, became Assembly of God, Holy Roller type. Did New Thought, all of those things. And I just kept looking. I kept looking. And I think that's part of what's happening now with the expansion. We know the universe is expanding.
Right.
They say it's expanding faster and faster, and we're part of that.
Yeah.
We are connected with source energy. So we are experiencing the same thing. And so we are learning that we can be more.
Right.
We aren't limited.
Right, yeah.
We are unlimited.
Yeah. Now, you see, this is why I wanted Douglas to come in today and talk to us, because I knew there was these beautiful gems of wisdom. They're very comforting, what you're saying, because we know, and most people do know, that people are searching more and more, and they're not finding it in those conventional places.
Correct.
They really aren't. And it's very hard also with technology and devices, electronic devices and wireless and all kinds of great technology on a level, but on the other side of it, there's no answers there. So where do you think the answers are coming from? Now, I know you kept referring to your heart, right? I mean, I saw that. But like from you mentioned a source God, like, can you just clarify a little bit of that for us?
Yeah, one of the things is all these things that are going on, I call it containment.
Okay.
Because that's who we are until we know differently. And when we came into this planet, it wasn't like that. We were free. I mean, you see kids, they're just free. They do things. They play. They have all kinds of fun and everything. Yeah. And yet we start getting all of these inputs from church, from family members, from peers, from school, that just start downsizing us as to who we are.
Yes.
So the religion looks good because I get these nice feelings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But after a while, that goes away because all this other stuff is still there. And so by expanding ourselves and getting rid of that stuck energy in there, we begin to flow. We begin to allow, what I do is I just allow source to flow through me now.
But is that a conscious choice? Like, do you actually say to yourself, right, I'm now going to allow source to flow through me? Is it at that place, or is it something that's automatic? Do you know what I mean?
I don't know that it's. I'm sure it's probably automatic for some people.
Right.
And may not even understand it, but I'm sure that it's that way because they just have a clear sense about themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, when one of the things I did was a Buddhist retreat, and I started running this white energy light from head to toe and back and forth through my body and kind of find out where all the stuckness was and that sort of thing. And then after having done the evolutionary stuff, I was laying in bed one morning and I'm running the white light, and I said, well, why don't you just run source energy? You know what that is now that I studied the evolutionary part. And so I realized how much is available to us that we're just unaware of.
Right.
I mean, 4%, we know about 4% of our universe. Yeah. So 96% is this dark energy or subtle energies that we have no clue about. So I started tapping into that. Okay. And I worked with it for a year just to really get a good sense. And one of the things I noticed that what happened for me is that my body started vibrating and shaking, and it does all kinds of different things because it's releasing some of those stuck energies.
Yes. Yeah.
And it does it with my subconscious and unconscious working with source energy, because I don't know what's going on. I just trust that the universe wants the highest and greatest good for me.
Sure.
So I allow that to happen.
Highest and greatest good for you, but also the highest and greatest good for everybody.
Exactly.
Now, this was a huge issue for a number of people. One time I remember when Aingeal Rose was doing an interview, and the interviewer said, if somebody broke into my house and, threatened my wife and kids, I'd shoot him, or I'd put them into jail and I would not forgive them ever, right? And I can understand on the level where that came from. But what you're saying is, if Source wishes the ultimate happiness for you, it must also want the same ultimate happiness for him or her or everybody.
Absolutely.
Irrespective of what they find themselves doing in the moment.
And we've evolved to a point where it's more practical that we can do it.
That's superb forgiveness, though. Yeah. Isn't that just
Absolutely.
Amazing forgiveness? Now, one of the things that we always try to do as well, we talked about consciousness and where there's this growth of awareness seemingly on this side, and I'm only just drawing these parallels so that we can understand it. Seemingly on this side, and then there's a divide, and then there's all this negativity going on here, right? So, which is a great way for the world to continue if it wants to be continually divided. The unification comes with that forgiveness that says, everybody on that side deserves just the same amount of love as I or you or me or anybody. So there's no sides. Everybody is equal. We're all one.
Exactly.
Which is beautiful. But one of the things that we like to do is, rather than talk about negativity and rather than dwell on it, we always like to provide some threads of solutions, for these kinds of things. And that's why I was fascinated with you with being an inventor, because that's what you do. You invent solutions. Now, when you described the source of energy coming out of white light and all of that, can you give our listeners and our viewers an idea of how you would do that? I mean, I know I want them to contact you because I think you're absolutely amazing, but just give people an idea so that they don't think, I'm going to involve myself now in $1,000 worth of therapy and, it's going to take me 2 years of, So give us some idea of what's involved and if it's something that anybody can do at home themselves.
Well, the white light basically came out of the Buddhist retreat. And what they do is they talk about just experience as much as you possibly can. A white light coming down from the top of your head, going through, and just start noticing if there's any thoughts or anything that goes on where it feels like it's stuck, and allow it to work there. Just cleansing, basically. And you go all the way through the body and down to your toes, and then you come back. And they start out very slowly doing that. And when I was going through the process, I've learned all kinds of different techniques. So I started running it fast already. And that's where we got to. And they told me I wasn't supposed to do that, but I trusted my own inner self as to do that. Yeah. So you run the light back and forth, and somehow or another, that white light, healing light, basically triggers things in your body that helps that release.
Right. Is it something that you can do unsupervised?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, like if you
I've
start
never-
shaking, for example, or releasing stuff.
Let it go. I mean, do
Okay.
it. Shake all you want.
So you don't
'Cause-
need somebody saying, looking over you.
Think about it with what animals do in the wild.
Yes.
They are out there, and if they get scared, fight, flight, or freeze, right? Well, what we do a lot when we're little is we freeze because we don't know what to do with it, especially when we're 1 to 2 years old. We've developed all these things, but our brain hasn't activated enough to figure out how things work. So we've got all this stuck energy from 0 to 2 years old.
Yes.
Not, if there's past life stuff there, that's there too, but it's nothing like what we have in our present life.
Right.
So you've got all this stuckness that's there, and it has nowhere to go.
I get you.
So when we get to be 2 years old, we've already accumulated a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to get rid of that. But there's different processes that people use.
Do you think that accumulates also from lifetime to lifetime as well?
I think it can. I have no doubt that it possibly can. Right. But I think there's also some interrelation. It's like when you've got something where you've got abuse, or let's just say abuse for one reason or another, and then other things happen in your life where you see somebody else that gets abused, all of that just piles up in that same place.
Yeah.
And it's like a pinball machine when you're trying to live this life. You've got all these things that are triggered in you that send you this way and that way, and it goes back to the monkey mind. You just go crazy.
Right.
You're not allowed to be able to relax and just notice what's going on, and that you're safe right now. Because we weren't safe when that happened.
Yes.
But we are safe now,
Yeah.
and we don't realize it. But because anything can trigger it. You talk about patterns,
Yeah.
People who marry 5 or 6 times, 7 times, 8 times, whatever, they just going through the same routine over and over and over. And that's where their learning is.
Right.
They don't have to do that, but they don't seek or find other ways to move forward. And that's one of the things I feel blessed is that I've continually just tried different things, and I always pick up a little bit from everything, but
Right.
I like to keep trying things. I like to keep doing new things and different things and see, how's that feel?
It feels fantastic. And we are going to take another little break here. Usually we would be finishing here, but I am so interested in keeping you on, if you don't mind, to go into a third segment here, because I really want to find out more about these techniques and how it helps people to really become aware of what's going on and to release this stuff in the body. So stay with us. We will come back. But before we go, at this stage, would you give some kind of contact details, how people might be able to get in touch with you before we go into the next segment?
Sure. They can reach me through my email if they want, and it's Vernon, Vernond, as in David or Douglas, KV, my initials, at yahoo.com.
So that's Vernon,
DKV,
DKV at yahoo.com. Super. We'll be right back after this.
Why would you come to Ireland just to drive along our country roads? Just to marvel at our historic sites? Or stand and stare at our statues? We want you to jump in. Or even jump on. Ride like the wind. Be swept up by our history and dazzled by our stories. Let them speak to you, captivate you. Oh, she's smitten. Go on. Jump into Ireland. Visit Ireland.com.
Oh, well.
As a submariner.
You are very welcome back. My name is Ahonu, and with me is Douglas Vernon. And we've chosen to go into a third segment with this because we were uncovering some really amazing techniques that you have found and that you use in your life and that are a great benefit to people. And also I wanted him to come in because I knew these things about you only because of you being so heart-centered. But I was never able to actually talk to you in depth so as to find out like what it is that you do. Yeah. Because you've got a lovely countenance about you, I have to say. It's like a healed countenance. It's a lovely thing. Yeah.
And I'm grateful.
It's a beautiful thing. So in this segment, we want to drill down now a little bit deeper into your favorite is it a technique that you use? Tell me about
It's basically just a guided meditation.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, it's called Evolutionary SELF Healing.
Okay.
And self is SELF, source, energy,
Evolutionary, no?
source, energy, life force, which is who we are.
Very cool.
And our connection with the power that
Yeah.
source is.
Yes.
So source, energy, life force, and that's where I've gone from my little self to, that's all caps, my big self.
Yes, yes.
And that was part of Daryl's writing. Is he came up with that acronym, which I just loved, and he said I could use it.
Right.
And
Well, just so that people know, we did have the great privilege of interviewing Daryl Oakes, and if you search back in the archives under Daryl, DARYLOCHS, you will find him, and it was a great interview, and he did talk a lot about his work, actually, and we were very privileged to have him here. So,
well, I was very privileged to be able to edit his work. It just was mind-blowing for me,
Yes.
and I'm ever so grateful. So anyway, what came to me when I was running the white light is, why not run source energy? So I started running source energy, and for a whole year, every day I would run source energy. And what I realized that was very similar to the Hakomi work that I did is that my body would release energy. It would jerk or spasm or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I realized that this is a way to also release some of that stuck energy in our body. So
and did you find over time that, like, the spasms or the shakes were getting less and less as you released, or they're getting more and more? Or
I would say they were probably fairly consistent, and I think maybe that is about balance. That source will only go so far,
right? Yeah.
Because we doesn't want to short circuit us,
And it's not going to kill you trying to heal you,
right?
In a sense.
Exactly. So what I discovered, and I'll tell you, it's just been phenomenal to me, is that I have expanded myself in ways that I never thought possible. Things have started happening in my life. I'll give you a few stories and that sort of thing. One is that, how people say, they look into the mirror and they say, I love you.
Yes.
And you're talking to yourself, basically. I've done that. But I was actually out walking with my dog one day, and I just was hit by this energy, and my body just glowed and felt so great, I realized I did love myself. Wow. It wasn't just words, it was a feeling. And that's part of what this is about, is the whole body being connected with your mind and your heart and all that. Yeah. So that was just one thing. Another thing was I had a friend that had written a book and said, well, why don't you write a book? I said, well, I really love editing. I've got no desire to write a book. 3 weeks later, I sat down and started writing a book. 3 weeks after that, I had a rough draft.
Oh.
It just poured out.
Fantastic.
And
do you think that was a result of this clearing this?
Absolutely. Right. The clearer we become in our body, the more capabilities and possibilities we have. It's just exponential from my experience. There's so many ways that I have grown from this. In the group that we're in together, actually, if you'd have seen me 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago probably, I wasn't anything like I am now.
Yeah, I can understand that.
The expansion has happened, and I just so much enjoy my life and the richness of it, and my connection with other people. It's just phenomenal what it's done for me. And I've got groups now that I do basic guided meditation and get them in touch with that energy that's within them. And they're finding changes in their lives as well.
I'm going to say something that I've never said before. And this is, and our audio listeners won't be able to witness this, but certainly our video viewers will be able to witness this. But I've noticed that when you're talking about this kind of thing, you just glow. You look younger.
Yeah. Your
whole self, your whole demeanor, your character, it glows, it changes, and you're lighter. And then if we change the subject, I noticed it when we were talking about negativity earlier on. I noticed that you seemed heavier and older.
Yeah.
If it's possible in those
I
few
understand.
moments. And
And
I
that's
don't know
part of
if
the body memory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you were in that space, when you said you were walking your dog and you felt you loved yourself, oh my God, seriously, Doug, your whole self just went into a place of, like you were like a child with a new toy.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know?
That's what I get from this, is just such great joy and ecstasy.
Yeah.
And I don't have the hang-ups that I used to have.
Yeah.
And a good example probably of this is that I also love my wife more than I ever have. And it wasn't about her, it was about me. It used to be, that friction that goes on in a couple and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't experience that nearly as much as I used to. It's much more clear. I have this great love for her, and she has no clue about what I do. And it doesn't matter, because we're connected in a way that we can share.
Sure.
And I can love myself, and
Makes sense.
it doesn't make any difference.
Makes sense. Now, something that troubles a lot of people all over the world is this issue of money. And and I'm only bringing it up. Now, you see how your attitude changed. It's interesting but I'm only bringing it up because I want to see, is there some way to bring this technique that you talked about, the SELF, that self, what was the full name of it?
Evolutionary self-healing.
Evolutionary
And it's
self-healing.
about healing all the stuff that's
but I
going
want
on
to
with
see,
us.
is there some way that could be used to help people who are experiencing real life issues with money, shortage of money, not enough to feed the kids, can't pay their rent, their mortgage, whatever, how do they relate?
Well, I think it's huge, and I don't know for sure yet, because I'm still waiting for that to happen. But I'm not hung up on it. I'm taken care of. I don't need to worry about that. And I want to share this as much as I possibly can with other people. I love doing what I do is basically a guided meditation. And the first part of the guided meditation is a general healing. Okay. We just allow source self, source energy, life force, and our subconscious, unconscious work together to clean out some of that stuck energy. Right. Because most of it we don't need. It's something from the past.
Well, that's why I asked. You see, what I'm trying to get at here is, and I'm wondering, is the issue of money that so many are experiencing, shortage of money that so many people are experiencing, could that also be part of that stuck energy?
Oh, God, yes.
So when you
it's
run
all
this,
part of our belief system.
Yes. So when you run this source energy, then, and it wipes it away, it's not that you are coming up with some practical way to save money on your grocery bill or reduce your interest rate here. It's that those things automatically get resolved because you have changed.
Right.
Am I putting my finger more or less on what's happening?
I think that's true. And the thing is, it's not an overnight thing. You got to remember, we had all this wounding through our whole childhood and young adulthood. Yeah. And now we're trying to dissipate it. Well,
so
sources,
another lifetime.
Wouldn't it be nice if Source came in and went, okay, you're all you can be right now, But then there wouldn't be much life. So that we keep growing and expanding and moving forward. And
so there's another question. And, I really appreciate you taking the brunt of these, and I know you weren't expecting any of this. But do you think that that's what this life is about? That we would get all these challenges as children purposely to find the solution that Source solves them all?
Absolutely. One of the things that was probably the biggest thing in my life that held me back was I was sexually abused by a friend of the family, a male friend of the family.
Right.
So I had all these doubts and everything. And till I was in my early 40s, I was powerless. Yeah. But when I started realizing that I had that strength within me, I became powerful. And I overcame that. And I am grateful for it, because if I hadn't had that, I don't know if I'd be where I am today.
Yes.
So in some ways, I'm grateful for it. I hate to see that it happens to people, but it does. But we're bigger than that.
Yes. It's funny that you should word it in that way, because a number of weeks ago, Aingeal Rose and I were talking about, in this dimensional space, it seems that we only learn through adversity. Like, for example, she tells the story of when she was 18, she was just 19 years of age and she got married, and 3 months later, her husband, her new husband, was shot and killed, just 3 months after they were married. But she said that, tragic and all as that was, and very traumatic, of course, at the time, that's what started her on her seeking, her journey, her searching for, like, what. And the same with me. I mentioned about my son.
Right.
Why did he die? Why did it happen to me? What's going on? Can I talk to him or her? Are they still there? You know, do they cross that veil and speak to us? You know, what exactly is going on? And then that all kind of comes to the place where you ask yourself, well, who am I? You know, and what am I doing here?
Exactly.
So it's strange how we do seem to learn by adversity, but I also subscribe to the belief that we don't need to learn through diversity.
We get it regardless of whether we want to go through it or not. It happens.
Yeah.
And it may be just little things even that we make decisions around that get stuck in us.
Yes.
I mean, it just amazes me, some of the things that have come up in my life. And I go, why would that be a big issue?
Yeah.
But to the body and the mind body, it's a big issue.
Right. Yeah.
It's stuck.
That makes sense. Yeah. Do you think there are any other ways to remove that stuckness other than the way you've described?
Oh, I think there's a lot of ways out there. There are so many different, I mean, think about all the people that are here. We all have different journeys. As long as we're seeking and looking for that change, we're going to be led to that.
Okay.
If we're not seeking it, we're going to be stuck. We're going to be going through those same patterns that we've gone through, maybe next lifetime or whatever. We'll have to go through it again and we'll figure that out. But why not do it this lifetime?
Why not, indeed, yeah. And it's a beautiful note to leave on. We do have to draw to a close. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with Doug Vernon today. Give the contact details again real quick, Doug, before we leave.
My email is Vernon, VERNON, DKV at yahoo.com. VernonDKV at yahoo.com.
That is super. We're going to have some more great stuff for you next week. Meantime, stay well and be warm this winter. And as it is Thanksgiving right now, we're grateful to you for listening and for watching, and we're very grateful to Douglas for coming in.
Oh, and I'm grateful for life.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Aingeal Rose and Ahonu on World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world.